Stocks continue to go up throughout the week, even though they're stalled a little bit today, but just barely under a percent under where they were futures were supposed to be. All three officers that were not arrested before are now arrested in Minneapolis. George Floyd may have died of coronavirus or died with coronavirus or whatever label they want to put on this to raise more outrage here. And Hillary Clinton's request to not testify about her emails is denied. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. So I find it really interesting that so many people still think that Kaepernick is going to be a viable option for the Minnesota Vikings coming up here, and there was just a spirited discussion. Let's call it that going on in the Generational Gap server over on Discord. They were talking about it yesterday, and I didn't get a chance to weigh in because, well, I work for a living. But I did want to weigh in on that, and I wanted to point something out here, and that is the fact that NFL owners are very, very willing to take on a lot of risks with a lot of their players. Some of them are domestic abusers, some of them are alcoholics. One of them was even a murderer and still continued to play until he went to prison. So they take a lot of chances with their players. I want to point out the fact that they want to say that Kaepernick is blackballed based on the fact that he did his little kneeling protest or whatever the fuck it was that he decided he needed to do. He is not blackballed for that. He got some attention out of it, and of course, they say that all attention is good attention, but he got just a little bit of attention out of this as he went along. But for the most part, you do need to keep in mind where Kaepernick was at the end of his career. Colin Kaepernick went undefeated against Aaron Rodgers for 3 seasons in 3 of Aaron Rodgers' best seasons in his career. As he aged, he got better and better. But yeah, for 3 of Aaron Rodgers' best seasons, Colin Kaepernick went undefeated against him. Then all of a sudden, the Packers came back and just trounced him. And if I remember correctly, that was an under 500 season for the 49ers that same year. Colin Kaepernick had something happen to him between his 3rd and 4th season. I don't know what it was, but he lost his touch. And trust me, if he was still playing like he was in his rookie year, it wouldn't matter how many times he kneeled for stuff. They would just keep the camera off him during the national anthem and just let him do his thing. He sucked at the end of his career. Big time. And yeah, he's kind of an asshole for the flag protest as well, but he sucked out loud at the end of his career. It's an unpopular opinion based on both sides of this because, of course, the far left wants to make him out to be a martyr for the fact he's being oppressed by racism, and the far right want to laugh and goad about the fact that he was fired just for disrespecting America. But no, he was fired because he sucked. All right, that was my anecdote for the day. Let's get started in here. But before we do get started into the news, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. We've got the Generational Gap. We've got my show. Steven put on a Know Nothing party last night. Go and check that out over there. We've got the Freckles and Brit Show, the R-Rated Conservative, and Wyatt Birkenhoff. We'll be doing another live stream coming up this week based on his feelings about what happened over across the country. So go and check us out and buy some of our swag. We love to give out swag, so come on over and throw a little bit of money down on the counter and come and check us out. All right. For starters, we are going to look at the stocks, and we've actually got a few stock articles this day. We're not just going to go through and read IBD and call it a day. We're actually going to look at a couple other things that went along with this, but let's look at the chart again because they don't want you to know, but the Dow was actually up another over 500 points yesterday. We are getting close to where we were before, and the little bit of trickle that we're seeing right now is, I think, negligible compared to what we have been seeing for the last few days. But yeah, the Dow Jones closed at 26,269.89, and of course, I do understand the fact that the Dow Jones is not necessarily tied to the economy, but it is a good mirror of what's going on there. That's why they love to use it when it dropped off. But let's see what the investors have to say. So, from Investors Business Daily, an advertisement. Dow Jones today, futures lag ahead of jobless report, Boeing Airlines rally, lights back on in Vegas. Lights on. This is from Alan R. Elliott. Stock futures flagged early Thursday with weak trade marked by several spot rallies. As the market awaited another round of weekly jobless claims data from the Labor Department, casinos rocked higher as dice began rolling again in Las Vegas. Airlines rose on another White House travel ban. Boeing jetted to the top of the Dow Jones today on an Amazon announcement. Dow Jones futures trimmed early losses to 0.2%. S&P 500 futures hung 0.4% below fair value. NASDAQ 100 futures traded down 0.3% on the stock market today. So one of the first times in quite a while we've said the futures were down, but not by much. Airlines steepened their rally following news that the Trump administration would ban passenger flights by Chinese airlines to the U.S. beginning in mid-June. So those China airplanes are not going to be holding people in. Boeing and everybody else is going to have to pick up the slack. United Airlines Holdings and Southwest jumped around 3%. Delta Air logged a 2.4% advance. The U.S. Global Jets ETF rallied 2.9% in pre-market trade. Gold miners moved up, with Kirkland Lake rising 1.3% to lead the IBD 50 list. The stock had undercut its 50-day moving average in heavy trade Wednesday. Newmont, one of the world's largest gold miners, climbed 1.8% in pre-market action. China-based NIO, a maker of electric automobiles, jumped more than 5% after its breakout on Wednesday. Past a 5.29% buy point, shares were extended. At the end of trade Wednesday, earnings news was mixed as Smartsheet, Michael Store's Cloudera took hard hits after the quarterly reports. Cloud computing enabler Zuora spiked 20% as losses narrowed sharply in its first quarter. China-based Lexin Fintech Holdings rocketed 11% higher after a mixed report. Casinos jump as Vegas rolls the dice. MGM Resorts International jumped more than 3% to the top of the S&P 500 after casinos reopened for gaming at 1 minute past midnight Thursday in Nevada. Other casino stocks were more subdued, with Las Vegas Sands adding 1.2% and Wynn Resorts up 0.8%. The restart ends a 78-day hiatus forced by the coronavirus pandemic, although not all casinos restarted Thursday morning. Certain amenities, including buffets and shows, remained closed, according to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Social distancing and antiseptic measures were an obvious part of the process. The LVJR said guest temperatures were taken upon entrance, with no one registering over 100.4 degrees was permitted to enter. All guests were reportedly met the coolness requirement. They're cool. Had their sunglasses on and everything at night. So, well, first I have to wonder when House's Casino is going to open back up. When can we go gamble at the Lucky 38 again? I don't know. That was a lame joke because I play Fallout New Vegas. Alright, let's move on here. CNN has an analysis here. Analysis. It's an op-ed. But I thought it was interesting given what I've been saying for the past couple days about the stock market going up in spite of the fact that they're burning the country down. So, from CNN Business, from Matt Egan, America is in turmoil and stocks are booming. Is the stock market broken? The stock market is not the economy, but rarely has the gap between Wall Street and Main Street felt so wide. The U.S. is going through its worst race crisis since 1968 following the death of George Floyd, an unarmed black man. Yeah, that's kind of engineered. I'm not even going to fucking lie to you at this point. At the hands of a police officer in Minneapolis, riots have hit cities across the nation, looting is rampant, and President Donald Trump is threatening to send in the military to stop the violence. The civil unrest could exacerbate the coronavirus pandemic that has already killed more than 100,000 Americans. I think more people died with coronavirus than died from coronavirus. That in turn could deepen the economic collapse that has forced more than 40 million people to file for unemployment. Meanwhile, U.S.-China relations are imploding, imperiling the trade war ceasefire reached between the world's two largest economies. And yet, the stock market is downright booming. The S&P 500 closed Tuesday at the highest level in nearly 3 months. The NASDAQ spiked 40% since March 23rd, fueled by the resilience of big tech, and it's now within striking distance of all-time highs. There are two major reasons for this: unprecedented stimulus from the Federal Reserve. Yeah, I'm a little worried about that. And investors not wanting to miss out on monster returns once the economy recovers. Joe Brusuelas, chief economist at RSM International, said he can't recall a time when the disconnect between Wall Street and the real economy was this great. He blamed in part the sharp decline in the number of public companies in the United States. The market is broken. It no longer reflects a forward outlook that is truly aligned with the real economy, he said. That's a problem because at some point the public will say these markets are rigged. Rigged. It's rigged. It's rigged, I tell you. Robert Shiller, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, told CNN Business that this backdrop of rising risks and surging stock prices leaves the equity market vulnerable to a setback. This is like a fire bell in the night, this moment, suddenly seeing rioting in cities all over the country, Schiller said, quoting Thomas Jefferson's famous 1820 description of the extension of slavery in the Missouri Compromise as something that filled the founding father with terror. I don't think standard economic models are much good at forecasting right now, Schiller said. So yeah, and there are a couple things that are going along with this. And the Fed's involvement in this, that's not to be discounted. And that is something we need to watch and make sure that we are keeping an eye on as we go forward. Because that anytime the federal government or the Federal Reserve get involved in the markets, it does have the potential to end badly. But people still need to go out and buy stuff. People still need to go out and eat. And people still need to go out and be about their daily lives. Business meetings are happening, even if protests are going on. Until they burn down the airports, they're still going to happen, and people are still going to drive places. I am still, unless we go on to a national federal lockdown, planning on leaving on Monday, to go on a little bit of a vacation. So, yeah, people are getting out, moving, buying stuff. All these places are going to need to be rebuilt. I am not going to give you stock advice right now. I'm going to make a strong suggestion, something to think about, but I cannot be held responsible for any negative impact on this because I'm not a stock expert. Please keep this in mind. But I would start looking at some of the home improvement stores, your Lowe's, your Home Depot, and your Menards if you're in the regular Midwest area. I would start looking into getting some of those stocks if they're available to you and if they're in your price range, because with all of the burning, looting, stealing, and everything else that's going down, along with the insurance companies paying out because people have been paying into them forever, I would definitely see building materials starting to go up. And even if you have a bigger building supply that you can buy, I would go and at least look into that. I'm not saying buy it. I'm not saying this is going to be your ticket to easy street and an early retirement. I'm just saying it'd be something that's worth looking into. Something that's worth talking to your investment advisor about. Somebody that's actually in a position to give you advice. I would think that would be something that's actually worth looking at. So, that's my take on it. Once again, I am not authorized to give any sort of investment advice. It's just something I would look at right now. Fox Business also weighed in on this. Why stocks are rallying amid American riots. Stocks are... Fuck you and your ad blocker. I already turned that off once. Why stocks are rallying amid American riots. Stocks are focused on a successful reopening of the economy. This is from Jonathan Garber over at Fox Business. The S&P 500 keeps fighting its way higher from the year's lows despite riots and looting that left a trail of destruction across America, just as businesses were beginning to reopen from COVID-19 shutdowns. The benchmark index has climbed 5.66% since the death of George Floyd through Wednesday and is now just 8.43% off its all-time high. Yeah, we're almost back to where we were, and that is incredible. And I don't know if we're going to make it or not by the end of the year, by election time, but I mean, we're getting pretty damn close. It has fallen by as much as 34% as stay-at-home orders aimed at slowing the spread of COVID-19 closed non-essential businesses and eliminated unnecessary travel. The stock market is treating the riots just like natural disasters, Chris Burns, CEO of Dynamic Monkey, an Atlanta-based financial planning firm, told Fox Business, adding that it doesn't see the long-term impact. He pointed to the S&P 500's 0.11% drop during the 9 days of Hurricane Katrina in August 2005, which he admitted didn't have as big of an impact on the entire country. Protests have popped up all over America in the week following the death of George Floyd. While many have been peaceful riots and many have been peaceful, riots and looting from New York to Chicago to Los Angeles have added stress to store owners still hoping for business conditions to return to normal after reopening from COVID-19 lockdowns. And there are a few things that are going on at play here. First off, with the Hurricane Katrina thing, I'm sorry, but that was a massively localized disaster. And I don't discount what happened and how it did affect business around the country. I don't discount that at all, but the factory where my dad works was literally not affected or completely untouched, and it might have ticked up just a little bit more because emergency vehicles needed the parts that they made in that particular factory. Places in Montana, Wyoming, factories that are up there, farming in Iowa, were not affected by Hurricane Katrina. That was incredibly localized, so there's no reason to think that it would have dropped completely off. And what we're seeing now, I'm guessing that we're going to see some spike in mortgage here, both in homes and in first-time businesses, and that's going to be a big thing too. After the burning and the looting, a lot of these people are going to be entrepreneurs. They're going to have their insurance money, and they are going to want to get out of the city. Yes, their biggest customer bases are going to be in the city, but they're going to see the writing on the walls, and I think a lot of them are going to want to move out. So we're going to see some home buying, some storefront buying outside of cities and into more suburban areas, because once you're in the city, you are subject to a firebomb, and this could happen again. I mean, it's been, 60 years? 50 years, I'm sorry, half a century since we've seen anything as bad as this, but it could happen again, and people are going to be wise to everything else, especially considering the fact I think a lot of people are starting to realize that this may be government and media engineered. The reaction, not necessarily what Chauvin did. I don't know if that's going to be tinfoil or if that's going to be reality at this point. I see enough arguments for both sides as far as what Chauvin and Floyd did. There's enough arguments that this was a genuine thing and he was an asshole, but there's enough evidence out there also to say that this could have been staged. But definitely the reaction is a bit staged and feels just a bit off and wrong. So even if it's engineered, they're going to want to get out of the city. They don't want their assets to be burned the next time somebody decides to start a race riot over nothing. So that's going to be that. So there are a few things at play here. I don't think it's nearly as doom and gloom as CNN says, but I am wary to say it's as bright and sunny as Fox Business says as well. All right, I got a couple out of a local St. Paul affiliate here, both on the George Floyd case. First off, we're going to talk about what I don't know is going to happen out of this, to be completely honest. From KSTP, 3 other former Minneapolis police officers involved in George Floyd death charged in custody. This is from Tommy Wita. On Wednesday, Hennepin County District Attorney Mike Freeman and Attorney General Keith Ellison announced that second-degree murder charge has been filed against former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, in addition to his previous charges. Additionally, the other 3 former officers involved in the fatal arrest of George Floyd were charged and taken into custody. According to court records, 37-year-old Thomas Lane, 34-year-old Tao Thao, and 26-year-old J. Alexander Kuang are each facing charges of unintentional aiding and abetting second-degree murder, as well as aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. They are currently being held at Hennepin County Jail. Chauvin is being held at Oak Park Heights Correctional Facility, facing second-degree and third-degree murder, as well as second-degree manslaughter charges in the incident. All 4 officers have bail set at $1 million each. That is excessive. And I thought we were champions of the cash bail system and getting that all up, reformed, and out of our lives, but apparently when it is against a political adversary, that all goes right out the fucking window. So that's something we need to keep in mind as we go forward on this. I want to begin with a reminder that we're here today because George Floyd is not here. He should be here, he should be alive, but he's not, Ellison said while announcing the additional charges earlier Wednesday. About 9 days ago, the world watched Floyd utter his very last words, "I can't breathe." I don't know, and I hate the fact that these guys were arrested right now, because legitimately, I don't know if these charges can stick to them, and if they get acquitted, of course there's going to be national media coverage over the jury decision. Of course there's going to be. And if they get acquitted, everything you're seeing now is going to happen again. I hate to say that. I know that a part of the reason that it's happening now is the fact that they hadn't been arrested, but I I don't know if that can stick, just based on the evidence that's in front of me. Now, of course, I would like to see the evidence that the jury is going to see as well, because there may be additional evidence to that. But just given what we have here, I don't know if that can stick. I'd be a little wary of second-degree murder on Chauvin himself. That's possible. It's difficult, but it's possible. But yes, I don't like any of this part. All right, and let's look at the other one here. Autopsy report: George Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest, was positive for COVID-19. Just in case you guys thought that was gone. Excuse me. The family of George Floyd and the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office agreed to release the full autopsy report of George Floyd. In the report, it is stated that Floyd died of a cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdual, restraint, and neck compression. Floyd had multiple blunt force injuries to his forehead, face, and upper lip, as well as cutaneous blunt force injuries in the shoulders, hands, elbows, and legs. So they beat the crap out of this guy and then kneeled on his neck. Along with the blunt force injuries, it's noted that Floyd had multiple natural diseases. Floyd was shown to have severe multifocal arterial sclerosis, heart disease, as well as hypertensive heart disease. It is noted that no life-threatening injuries were identified on Floyd. That's gonna be what makes murder too difficult. A post-mortem nasal swab was taken, which confirmed that Floyd was positive for SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. It is noted that Floyd was known to be positive for COVID-19 on April 3rd. The post-mortem the post-mortem positivity likely reflects asymptomatic but persistent PCR positivity from a previous infection, the report said. So, with that sentence there, I don't know if he even was positive with COVID-19 and contagious at the time. That might have been the antibody test that everyone says that is out there. But if he has heart disease, though, too, that's questionable because, from what I understand, the COVID and the heart disease working in conjunction with each other are a little bit of a deadly combination. So I think this changes a lot of things. Some of the specific findings include respiratory system. The right and left lungs weigh 1085 and 1015 grams respectively. The external surfaces are pink only on the most anterior aspects and deep red-purple in all other areas. The pulmonary parenchyma is diffusely congested and edematous. No mass lesions or areas of consolidation are present. The pulmonary vascular tree is free of thrombolia or I can't read that word. I'm not a doctor. I'm sorry. The tracheobronchial tree is free of blood, edema fluid, or foreign material. Comprehensive findings can be found on the full autopsy report below. And I'm going to hold on to this article. I'm not going to close it out like I usually do here. And I'm going to put this in the Discord if you guys want to read it yourself. It's I read a couple pages of it before we got started here. And it's interesting to say the least. And I am going to go through and read the rest of it as well. But yeah, that is it's an interesting thought that, yes, COVID is going to come back, and yeah, we're going to go from George Floyd was a murder victim to he was a coronavirus victim, apparently. I wonder if he's counted in the Minnesota statistics at this point. All right, let's go on to the next one here. Obama urges George Floyd protesters to push for change, make people in power uncomfortable. This is from Brian Robinson over at Fox News. Former President Barack Obama, in a virtual town hall hosted by his foundation Wednesday, called on demonstrators to channel their anger over George Floyd's death into an opportunity to make leaders uncomfortable and pressure them into making real policy changes. The town hall was hosted by the Obama Foundation's My Brother's Keeper Alliance, which supports young men of color. During the event, Obama said that he rejected a debate that emerged in a little bit of chatter on the internet about voting versus protest, politics, and participation versus civil disobedience and direct action. "This is not an either or, this is a both," he said. "And to bring about real change, we have to highlight a problem and make people in power uncomfortable. We also have to translate that into practical solutions and laws that could be implemented and monitored and make sure we're following up on." Obama also urged every mayor in the country to review your use of force policies with their communities and commit to report on planned reforms before prioritizing their implementation. Dude, does this guy think he's still the fucking president? No, that couldn't be, because he didn't believe in any sort of federalism. Once he's out of office, he believes in federalism, but not while he's in office. During a virtual roundtable discussion, he compared current protests to the unrest of the 1960s and said polls show a majority of Americans support the current demonstrations taking place nationwide, despite some having been marred by the actions of a tiny minority that engaged in violence. Dude, I don't know what the official numbers are, but the damage that's being caused right now is not tiny minority. These are either really, really active and highly motivated people, or at least a very, very close minority. Let's say that, at the very least, but could possibly be a majority as well. Last week, Obama said the death of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man who died in Minneapolis police custody May 25th after a white officer kneeled on his neck for more than 8 minutes, shouldn't be normal in 2020 America. He laid out plans for a change in a post on Medium and countered the argument made by some protesters that demonstrations will facilitate more societal change than voting. "I've heard some suggest that the recurrent problems of racial bias on our criminal justice system proves that only protests and direct action can bring about a change, and that voting and participation in electoral politics is a waste of time," he wrote. I couldn't disagree more, rather. I don't know, I can't read my teleprompter. So, yes, he decided that he's still president and he needs to make a speech. But, of course, W decided he needed to as well, and I would love to hear their takes on how many brown kids that each of them bombed, but that's a story for another time, apparently. And nobody else wants to pay attention to that, so we're going to keep moving on here. Let's talk about everybody's favorite Democratic socialist. OcasioCortez explodes over Tom Cotton op-ed that features ideas supported by a majority of Americans. This is from Ryan Saavedra. Socialist Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez lashed out at the New York Times for allowing Senator Tom Cotton to publish an op-ed in the newspaper that features ideas that are supported by the majority of Americans. Cotton's op-ed accurately describes the violent riots that have rocked Democrat-controlled inner cities across the country over the last week in response to the death of George Floyd, who died in police custody last week. Cotton then describes how the violent riots are harming the most vulnerable communities and suggests that the solution to fixing the problem would be to invoke the Insurrection Act and deploy the military to highly unstable areas that are not doing what it takes to fix the problem. Ocasio-Cortez, along with the leftist reporters at the New York Times, called James Bennett, editorial page editor at the New York Times and brother to Democrat Senator Michael Bennett, for publishing the op-ed and made numerous false suggestions in doing so. Ocasio-Cortez posed the following questions for Bennett. Can you explain why you chose to publish misinformation in your pages in service of an opinion for state violence? Can you explain your choice to publish it on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square? Our next trick is numerology. You twit. Do you believe your black colleagues saying your choices have put them at risk? Oh my God, this makes my brain hurt. Other cues. Did you consider the author's explicit call for violence, no quarter, when you chose to run this piece? Is it your belief that you are not responsible for the factual integrity of what you publish? It's a fucking opinion piece, you dumb bitch. Do you believe calling for violence is an opinion? And the worst part is that people on the left have called for worse in the pages of the New York Times. This is not an idea of, well, this is wrong factually, and therefore it's an opinion, and this is not what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is trying to ask. This is, the GOP is not allowed in the pages of the hallowed New York Times because we control the narrative now. That's what this is. You dumb twit. Ocasio-Cortez was unable to list off any of the misinformation that she claimed was contained in the piece. So, yes, that is the first one. And, of course, yes, this is exactly what I just mentioned. This is, GOP is not allowed to have an opinion in our most venerated newspapers. Get them out of here. We control the narrative now. And anybody else who thinks differently is a racist and a sexist. So, that is that. And on the other side of this, from Fox Business, AOC rips Washington Redskins over Blackout Tuesday post. Change your name, Congresswoman says. This is from Thomas Barabi over at Fox Business. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called on the NFL's Washington Redskins on Tuesday to change their name after the team shared a social media post in solidarity with nationwide protests against police brutality. The Redskins were one of several sports franchises to share a black square on their social media accounts, of course, because I'm helping, as part of the Blackout Tuesday campaign, which called attention to racial injustice following the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody last week. In response, Ocasio-Cortez called attention to the franchise's refusal to change its team name and logo despite allegations that it's racist towards Native Americans. Want to really stand for racial injustice? Change your name, Ocasio-Cortez wrote on Twitter. I almost commented on this one when I saw it on Twitter, but I couldn't. It was just too stupid by that point. Various Native American groups have staged protests against the team name in recent years. Team owner Dan Snyder has maintained that he has no intention to ever change the name. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell said in January 2018 that the name and logo change was unlikely to occur. I don't see them changing their perspective, Goodell said at the time. So, yeah. Yeah, this is just another virtue signal from the Black Square crowd. And I saw somebody over on Freckle Liberty's Twitter that was complaining about the fact that people say virtue signaling, in spite of the fact that it is indeed virtue signaling. But, I mean, it's... The guy's response to virtue signaling was to virtue signal by saying that people who say virtue signaling have no virtue. And all of this just proves it at this point. So, yeah, good on the Redskins. Once again, this goes back to the COVID thing and the Blackout Tuesday thing. And, I mean, with the masks and everything that we saw from February up until even the present day, this was the government and the media companies socially engineering you to accept whatever they tell you to accept and do whatever they tell you to do. And the Black Square thing was just a demonstration of the obedience that they pulled out of this country. So keep that in mind as we go forward on this. And let's keep going. From CBS News, a white bar owner in Omaha shot and killed a black protester. He won't face charges. This is from Sophie Lewis. During protests in Omaha, Nebraska over the weekend, a black activist was shot and killed by a white bar owner after a fight broke out. The county attorney said the shooter will not face charges because he was defending himself. James Skurlock was killed by Jacob Gardner, the owner of the Hive Boat and Gatsby Bar in Omaha's Old Market neighborhood, around midnight Saturday in the midst of protests against police brutality and George Floyd's death. The Douglas County Attorney's Office determined that Gardner acted in self-defense after interviewing the shooter and reviewing video of the incident. There was a consensus that the actions of the shooter were justified, County Attorney Don Klein said during a briefing on Monday. There wasn't any big disagreement about what happened here. According to prosecutors, the incident followed an altercation involving Gardner's father, who pushed several protesters, then asked them to leave the bar. A grainy surveillance video of the shooting played during the briefing shows that Gardner backed up and pointed a gun after two people tackled him in the street. He initially fired 2 shots into the air and did not hit anybody. After Scurlock jumped on his back, Gardner can be heard saying, "Get off me," many times before fatally shooting Scurlock once in the clavicle. Klein said Scurlock was taken to the local hospital where he died from his injuries. Yeah, if you take a bullet close range to the clavicle, you might walk away, but it's going to be pretty difficult. Mr. Gardner, as we know now, has said, "I did what I did to defend myself, and we find that we can't disprove that from the evidence that we have," Klein said. In response to outrage on social media, Klein added that there was not any racial tone to the conversations between Scurlock and Gardner. And yet, I bet you somewhere down the road we hear today, somewhere, somehow, that he's racist for doing this. Because anytime there's violence, from white to black, it is racism, especially when we're in the midst of burning the country down over this racism. Gardner was taken into police custody and released on Sunday. Prosecutors say he has an expired concealed carry permit. So yeah, good on him and good on the prosecutors for recognizing what legitimate self-defense is. Because it was legitimate at this point. If the dude was on his back getting ready to burn down his property, then this was self-defense. Defense of life, liberty, and pursuit of property right there. This was perfect and textbook. All right, let's keep going on the next one here. From Fox News again. No, I'm not going to turn off my ad blocker. 2 NYPD wow, I can talk. 2 NYPD cops shot another stabbed during an unprovoked attack. This is from David Arrow over at Fox News. A New York City police officer was randomly attacked and stabbed in the neck late Wednesday while patrolling Brooklyn, which resulted in a struggle that caused 2 additional officers to suffer gunshot wounds, police said at an early news conference Thursday that a preliminary investigation indicated a male suspect walked up to the officers casually and whipped out the knife. They said the officers involved had been assigned to anti-looting posts to prevent people from breaking into stores. That officer was stabbed in the left side of his neck, thank God missing an artery, New York City Police Commissioner Dermot Shea said. He called it a completely cowardly, despicable, unprovoked attack on a defenseless police officer. 2 additional officers were struck in the hand by gunfire during the incident, police said. They were rushed to Kings County Hospital and are expected to survive. Nearby officers later heard the gunshots and responded to find the suspect brandishing a gun, which police said was likely taken from an officer. The suspect was shot multiple times at the scene, later described by Shea as chaotic. He added that 22 shell casings were recovered following the incident. I think that we're all fed up with what we're seeing in many levels. This violence has to stop, Shea said. The FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force is also aiding in the investigation. And yes, if you are sneaking up on somebody defenseless and you're not playing Fallout New Vegas on a kill everything run, that's disgusting. Yes, I understand defending yourselves if the cops are going too far and, firing tear gas into the crowd, as people have claimed they're doing across. There's still conflicting reports over that. But yes, I can understand defending yourself against an over-militarized and overbearing police force. That is understandable. But just sneaking up on somebody and attempting to execute him, no. If you want to kill somebody, make sure that he has the ability to fight back. That's the reason that we're into this to begin with, is the fact that police killed somebody in custody that did not have the ability to fight back. So the fact that somebody jumped up and snuck up on a cop like that is just, no, that's disgusting and wrong. You never hit below the belt and you never attack a defenseless opponent. Never. So I do hope the suspect gets the full extent of the law on this one. And of course, as I say with everything else, yes, he deserves and is guaranteed his right to a speedy trial by a jury of his peers. But man, I hope they see what we saw here. All right, next one here from CNN. Sign up for CNN's newsletter, Meanwhile in America. No. Military leaders condemn Trump over protest response. This is an op-ed. Analysis from Stephen Collinson. President Donald Trump is facing an unprecedented revolt from the elite core of ex-military leaders and presidents over his brazen response to mass protests and inflaming of racial divides. In a true Washington bombshell on Wednesday evening, former Defense Secretary James Mattis, a warrior revered by his troops, told Americans they must come together without the president. Hey, you remember 3 years ago when Mattis was the scum of the earth and the worst thing to walk the world because he would be willing to work in the Trump administration? Yeah, I guess that's gone. He is now a hero of the left because he would stand against the evil, evil orange man, evil Donald Trumpler. He's so evil. Let's read on. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try, said Mattis, who has kept silent since resigning in 2018. Instead, he tries to divide us. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years of this deliberate effort. No, that's not what's happening. The Patriot Act was a horrible thing, and I will condemn Trump for that, among many other things that went along with this. And among a lot of other things that Trump has done, but the division, no, that started long before Trump. That started long before Trump. If anything, from what I've seen, he's at least trying to quell some of it so we can all get along and get back to work, but fuck you, Mattis. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership, said the retired Marine general in a statement, criticizing Trump for threatening to deploy regular troops to quell unrest and flagrant threat to U.S. political stability. Our president right now is taking the time in trying to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of property of citizens of the United States. Now, yes, they have the right to defend themselves from all enemies, foreign and domestic, guaranteed in the Constitution, but Trump sending in the military is doing the same thing, trying to protect the people, their lives, their liberties, and their properties. Because many of these local mayors won't do so. Do I think it's the right decision? No. Do I think it's the only decision? Possibly. We may be at the point where we've exhausted everything else. But no, keep telling us how divisive this is, Mattis, and keep sitting up there and being lauded as a hero of the left now because you will dare stand against evil, evil orange man. Alright, let's keep going here. Fuck off, Mattis. From the Daily Wire, leftists promote story of police shooting 13-year-old in New York City. The story was wrong. This is from Ryan Saavedra. Another viral story that was allowed to trend on Twitter this week that demonized law enforcement officials has been debunked by law enforcement officials. It's probably not who should be doing the debunking, but if it's false no matter who debunked it. Leftists falsely claimed that a 13-year-old boy was shot 19 times by law enforcement officers from the New York Police Department on Tuesday night, when in fact the person was a 34-year-old man who police say had shot another man and was coming toward them with a firearm and ignored repeated calls from them to drop his weapon. An apparent supporter of the far-left Black Lives Matter organization, Saavedra, you could have left that far-left part out at this point. I think we all know what Black Lives Matter is, and you don't need to stoke the flames of division. Tweeted out the video, which was viewed millions of times and retweeted over 40,000 times, and received no warning labels from Twitter for spreading false information. That is a good point, though. The account wrote, "This video keeps getting deleted around Twitter, so here's the video of a 13-year-old boy getting shot 19 times by NYPD." Yeah, this video keeps getting deleted around Twitter is the easiest way for you to gin up an outrage. One of the initial accounts that spread misinformation about what happened was Rachel Millman, who Chief Terrence A. Monahan, NYPD Chief of Department, responded directly to, writing, "This is inaccurate information. The armed man who was shot by police was 34 years old and had just shot another man." It was a toy gun. That was what they were trying to tell you yesterday. I think 19 times was a bit excessive, unless he was still advancing on you. I mean, what was 50 Cent? 50 Cent was shot 5 times? 9 times. I don't remember. But not all at once. Other leftists use the situation to falsely portray the police as racist, even though there's little evidence that is true by comparing other situations to the false portrayal of what happened last night. One Twitter user wrote, "A 13-year-old had a gun, and the NYPD shot him 19 times, but when a white man walks around in public with a huge-ass gun, they don't do jack shit 19 times, and Republicans still wonder why there's protests in all 50 states." Yeah, I saw that one yesterday. Far-left Democrat Abdul El-Sayed posted a picture of protesters at the Michigan State Capitol who were armed and wrote, "Remember when the police shot these guys 19 times because they had a gun? Oh wait, that was a black man in New York." El-Sayed's tweet was false because the protesters in Michigan were legally allowed to have firearms with them in the state capitol, and most importantly, hadn't just shot somebody. So, yeah, I knew this was going to come to a head, and I kind of figured that there was something off. I found this morning, but I kind of figured there was something off on this after the story disappeared completely within a few hours of me discovering it right before the show yesterday. And I remember we talked about it yesterday, but yeah, if something like that, cops shooting a 13-year-old 19 times, disappears that quickly, it was likely bullshit. All right, now for some good news. From Fox Business, gun sales break May record amid coronavirus pandemic and riots. This is from Stephanie Pagones over at Fox Business. Gun sales spiked more than 80% year over year in May as consumers responded to safety concerns and civil unrest prompted, in part by the novel coronavirus pandemic, experts say. Approximately 1,726,053 guns were sold in May. Attaboy, kids. Let's make that 2 million. A record-breaking 80.2% increase from last year, according to data released late Monday by Small Arms Analytics and Forecasting, which examines the raw data obtained from the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS. I wonder if David Hogg has seen this, because he keeps talking about people rising up against the government, and I do believe that we're going to see some of that, especially with these record gun sales, but yeah, he is probably crying if he sees this, or sitting in his safe space ignoring it, one of the two. I mean, it wasn't reported on CNN or MSDNC, so he probably hasn't even seen it, but yeah, it's there. Of the firearms sold, 1,052,723 were handguns and 535,014 were long guns, the SAAF estimated. Gun stock soars, riots, looting erupt across America. I almost want to read that, but we're already running up against the clock. Similar increases were previously recorded through the months of April, when data showed a 71.3% increase from April 2019, and March, when an 85.3% increase was reported year over year, according to information previously released by the SAAF. Yes, people were afraid of just this thing, not necessarily a riot inspired by a race war, but definitely people coming in because they needed food, they needed shelter, and they needed stuff, and they were willing to take it by force, by a baseball bat, by a Molotov, by anything else. And these people, who were legally allowed to carry guns to defend their life, liberty, and pursuit of property, didn't want to be stuck with their pants down when the people who were rioting, looting, because they needed food and possessions, came for them. So yes, once you put 40 million people out of work by a government-engineered response to a natural pandemic, people are going to start worrying about their own property. All right, let's go back to the Daily Wire. Acting DHS Secretary Chad Wolf, feds have opened up investigations going after leaders of Antifa and other organizations. This is from Daily Wire News. Acting Department of Homeland Security Chad Wolf told Fox News on Wednesday that federal law enforcement officials have opened up cases against leaders of Antifa and other organizations who are believed to be behind violent riots that are plaguing the nation's inner cities. When asked by Fox News host Brett Baer who was behind the violent riots, Wolf answered, "I think overall what we've seen as far as taking place, sort of boots on the ground in these metropolitan areas, are groups like Antifa or anarchists in general. And those, if there's a power structure in place, they're not anarchists. I'm sorry. And those are the types of people that we see. That's the intel that we're getting back, primarily moving these violent protests and these organizations in a certain way, which usually occurs after nightfall. So during the day, we usually see the nonviolent protests occurring. Yeah, law-abiding citizens abiding by the curfew and generally being good people who are dispossessed by the events of America. Those are good people, and they have the right to do so. Wolf continued, and then when it gets to the night, we see the more violent protests start to happen. Criminals starting to take place, loosely organized during the day to achieve a specific goal. I think what we're seeing right now, it's a loosely organized within a metropolitan city. Is it being organized across the country in an organized way? I don't think that we see that yet, but again, we're continuing to analyze the intelligence and really getting the feedback out of the state and local law enforcement officials in these individual cities, Wolf continued, so we will continue to look at it. We are partnering. We have a number of investigators at the department that are working with DOJ and working with the FBI. We know that they have opened up a number of cases specifically targeting some of the leaders of Antifa and other organizations that are involved. So, I mean, at least they're going to look into it. We're going to see if this is actually an organized chain or if this is just loose people that want to throw on black and cause a bunch of shit to happen. And once again, this could go either way. I do think that there's some level of organization to it, just because of how quickly they mobilize, whether it's Reddit organization, Facebook organization, or something sinister coming up from the top if you really want to get the tinfoil on. But it's time to start looking into this and figuring out where it comes from, because it happens all too often at this point. All right, the next one here, going back to everybody's favorite socialist from Fox News. Ad blocker alert. Ocasio-Cortez backs Engels' challenger in primary. This is from End in March. Because, in case you forgot, we are still in an election year, which is probably part of the reason you're seeing a lot of this going on right now. I don't have it up right now because RCP is really, really bitchy about ad blockers, and I'm not turning it off for them. Because RCP's ads are so bad that they will bog what's left of my processor down. I just priced out actually the replacement for this laptop, and we're just under $1,000 right now. Plus, if I decide to get 3 monitors, it's probably gonna push me up to about $1,000 to get what I want and what I need for my needs. But yeah, if I opened up RCP without the ad blocker on, you're gonna see me start doing this kind of stuff as we go along. You're gonna start seeing me move choppy. But let's see what happens here. Anyway, what I was saying with RCP was the fact that they actually have Biden above Trump in the betting odds right now for the first time in a very, very long time. The betting odds are in Biden's favor somehow. I don't know how, but he can't string a... Well, I do know how. Let me rephrase that. Trump is actually on the front lines and doing stuff and saying stuff. Biden is hiding in his basement unless he needs to put out a highly sanitized and highly produced statement. But let's talk about the election. Despite a less than stellar record on past endorsements, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said Wednesday she was going to throw her support behind Representative Eliot Engel's primary challenger. This movement requires renewed and revitalized leadership across the country and at the ballot box, she tweeted, as she lent her support to Jamal Brown, an educator. Bowman, I'm sorry, not Brown. Wow. Earlier this year, Ocasio-Cortez announced the Courage to Change PAC, which was seen at the time as a threat to established Democrats. Despite her freshman status in the House, she is popular and her endorsement is seen as a gateway to the younger vote. Steve Bannon, the former White House chief strategist, once called Ocasio-Cortez one of the most powerful politicians in Washington. Now she is the young Latin Trump is what she is. She called Bowman, who is African American, a profound community leader. Engel's district has mostly black and Hispanic voters. It doesn't tell me where Engel's district is. Engel has reported raising more than $1.6 million through March, about triple Bowman's haul, but Engel has been accused of spending insufficient time in his district, and Bowman's challenge is considered legitimate. Yeah, well, so is Ocasio-Cortez, just so you know. Engel was also caught on a hot mic Tuesday saying he wouldn't care about not being allowed to speak at a news conference about the unrest in his Bronx. Okay, so he's in the Bronx district following the death of George Floyd if he wasn't in a competitive Democratic primary. If I didn't have a primary, I wouldn't care, Engel can be heard telling Bronx President Ruben Diaz twice, as he asked for a chance to speak at a news conference with the city and state officials. Engel later explained his comments to a New York One reporter. In the context running for re-election, I thought it was important for people to know where I stand. That's why I asked to speak. Of course, I care deeply about what's happening in this country. That's what I wanted to convey. I love the Bronx, grew up in the Bronx, and lived here my whole life. He said, I would not have tried to impose on the borough president if I didn't think it was important. I don't know if Cortez's endorsement is going to actually carry water in New York State itself. Yes, in places like Colorado and Illinois and California, it would carry a lot of weight, but I don't know if in New York City itself it's going to carry a lot of weight because, yeah, she doesn't spend time in her district. They've barely seen her. She's doing exactly what she called Crowley out on, not representing her district, representing the country. So, yeah. And of course, whoever wins the primary in the Bronx is 95% likely to get elected because, like Pelosi says, a glass of water with a D on it could get elected in there. So whoever they put the D label on is going to become most likely the representative. So we'll see what happens there. All right, I got a couple more here that we're going to do a thing I like and a thing I hate, and we're going to get on out of here. So, from Law and Crime, a Dan Abrams production, and this is the only thing that I could find on this because, of course, the mainstreams are never going to talk about this, and not even some of the fringe sites like the Washington Examiner are going to come out and talk about any of this at all. But it's something that we need to be paying a lot of attention to as we're going forward, and I think a big part of what we're seeing now is a distraction from this as well. I do think we're trying to distract from the stock market going up, but this is a big one too that's going on, along with all the testimony that we saw yesterday that I haven't even had a chance to look into, because Rosenstein got up and was forced to testify yesterday as well, and I don't even have anything about that on the stack. I've got one. I take that back. I do have one. But let's see what Law and Crime has to say. DOJ backed writ of Mamandis in Michael Flynn case, but opposed it when Hillary Clinton's emails were involved. This is from Elura Nanos. We interrupt the hellscape that is 2020 with the news that we are somehow still talking about Hillary Clinton's emails. Yes, this is not an objective piece. I apologize for that, but this is the only thing that I could find talking about this. Clinton's legal team argued before the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals on Tuesday against a FOIA lawsuit filed by conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch. Clinton was noticed for an in-person deposition and argued against attending. U.S. District Court Roy C. Lamberth ruled against Clinton in March, saying she had to be deposed in person. After that, Clinton's team pulled an interesting and seldom successful legal maneuver. They filed a petition for Mamandis against the judge. Mandamus is legalese for forcing government official to do their job properly. Typically, litigants unsatisfied with adverse rulings simply appeal these rulings. Petitioning for mandamus is far from a go-to legal strategy. And yet, two very high-profile cases hit courtrooms this week, both hoping that mandamus will save them. This particular case is extra odd, even for mandamus cases. The appellate court first invited and then ordered the DOJ to come to oral arguments over Clinton's deposition. At the time, on Tuesday, lawyers for Clinton and her longtime aide Cheryl Mills, who was also noticed for deposition, argued that Clinton and Mills have already turned over tens of thousands of messages and that the real purpose for the depositions was to harass them on the national stage. Clinton's attorney David Kendall called the deposition social media fundraising and said that Judicial Watch sought it solely to create video footage that can be used for partisan political attack ads. Whatever one thinks of Benghazi and the emails and the SCIF and all of that, though, there appears to be something just under the surface here that requires a little attention. The Justice Department was not nearly as interested in saving former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton from a deposition as it was from rescuing Donald Trump Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross or former Vice President Dick Cheney from depositions. The difference may be related to the fact that there's another high-profile mandamus case going on in the D.C. Circuit that one is about the prosecution of Michael Flynn. Okay. In all reality, right now, the thing with Flynn is the fact that Barr has decided that he's going to dismiss the charges because it was a railroading attempt. It was a government agency going outside of the realm of normalcy to try and force a confession of something that wasn't done away from General Flynn. That is the state going over, above and beyond against a private citizen and threatening his family. And the fact that Sullivan is coming out and trying to block this he's not doing his job. Let this go. The DOJ says there's no case here, and they're willing to let it all go. And if they don't do that, Trump's just going to issue a pardon. It's going to be the same effect either way. But Clinton has gone out of her way not to release all of her emails. She's released the selected ones that they need to that she feels they need to see, and she's never had to testify for it. Retain an attorney, Mrs. Clinton, and go testify against this. Testify under oath. You're not getting arrested, are you? Testify under oath, is there something to hide? I don't know, but it appears, and this story came to me because I saw a tweet saying that she had lost it. I've not found any news that said that she's lost the appeal, that she's going to be forced to testify yet. But once again, we have way more news right now going on about people stabbing police officers in the neck to even pay attention to the fact that Mrs. Clinton is about to be deposed by a D.C. Circuit Court. And I said yesterday on Twitter when I saw this that all of the judges in the D.C. Circuit Court are going to come down with a sudden case of suicidal depression. All right, a couple more here. We've really got to start shortening this show up. But there's just so much happening. From the Hill, Democratic senator to skip vote on Obama-era subpoenas. This is from Jordan Carney. Senator Tom Carper said on Thursday that he will skip a vote on authorizing broad subpoenas in a GOP probe focused on the Obama administration. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee is scheduled to vote on Thursday on whether or not to give Senator Ron Johnson, who oversees the panel, broad subpoena powers to compel the testimony of more than 30 individuals, as well as documents from several agencies. But Carper, a member of the panel, called subpoenas political stunts. This committee is spending its time trying to score political points and help a president in an election year. History will remember that we chose to prioritize right now, and it will not judge these actions of the chairman kindly. And this, of course, goes against the normal plan of trying to help the Democrats win in an election year. Carper said in a statement. Carper said that he will skip the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee meeting where Johnson will force the subpoena authorization vote and instead attend an Environmental and Public Works Committee hearing related to the coronavirus. I will not be attending Chairman Johnson's politically motivated proceedings today. Instead, I will be attending our EPW hearing and working in a productive bipartisan way to advance legitimate Senate business that will actually help our constituents and our economy recover. Once again, I urge Chairman Johnson and all my Republican colleagues to do the same, he added. Carper's decision to boycott the subpoena vote is the latest sign of growing tensions as Republicans ramp up their investigations tied to the Obama administration. Johnson is seeking broad subpoena authority for a wide-ranging investigation that includes reviewing Crossfire Hurricane, the name for the FBI's investigation into the election interference and the Trump campaign, the probe of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, and leaks stemming from the early days of the Trump administration. And this is where I'm going to end reading this article, but I do want to point this out. Number one, if this was going the other direction, The Hill and every other mainstream outlet would be saying, just come and testify. You've got nothing to hide. Come and testify. Testify, testify. Do the investigation. The Republicans are evil. Make sure that every one of them goes to prison. But because this is going against the Obama-era DOJ and the Obama-era cabinet, this is a political stunt meant to help Donald Trump get reelected. And I do want to point out the double standard that goes along with this, but once again, this comes to a much more important part is we do need to make sure that the Fourth and the Fifth Amendments, We're being followed in these investigations because, once again, and this is the most important part, this is the thing that I keep trying to drive home with you people right now. If they will do it to Flynn, if they will do it to Trump, if they will do it to Kavanaugh, they will do it to you. For speaking out against the government, you will go away to the gulag without a trial because they can get away with it, because they could get away with it with Flynn and with Trump and with Kavanaugh and with everybody else. So we need to look into these things, and we need to get the people out of power who will abuse the Constitution and will just sidestep it in the name of political power. All right, we got one more here, and then we're going to do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate. This is an opinion piece. Keep that in mind as we go forward. Rod Rosenstein likely to get hostile reception in the Senate testimony on origins of the Mueller probe. This is from Ian Pryor. Former Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein will find few allies when he testifies before the Senate Judiciary Committee Wednesday regarding the origins of the investigation of alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia in the 2016 presidential election. Republicans will blame Rosenstein for Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses and an aggressive investigation by special counsel Robert Mueller that yielded nothing of substance concerning President Trump or his campaign. Democrats will attack Rosenstein for his role in concluding that President Trump did not commit obstruction of justice and ending their dream of an indictment. Neither of these two views captures the complex reality of Rosenstein's tenure. In reality, Rosenstein's decision helped preserve the integrity of the Justice Department while protecting President Trump from FBI leadership gone rogue and Democrats hell-bent on removing the president from office. Upon Rosenstein's confirmation in April 2017, the Justice Department was at the center of a storm unprecedented in its history. Since Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself the previous month from the Russia collusion investigation upon confirmation, Rosenstein became acting Attorney General for federal investigation that received enormous news coverage and enormous MSNBC conspiracy theories as well. At that point, the investigation itself was being conducted by the FBI under the leadership of Director James Comey, who repeatedly kept the Obama administration, Attorney General Loretta Lynch, and acting AG Sally Yates in the dark about his machinations. To make matters worse, the Justice Department was largely devoid of political appointees in the early days of the Trump administration. Interviews with the potential new U.S. attorneys had not begun. The Assistant AG for the National Security Division was a year away from confirmation. So yes, Rosenstein got to testify. I have not even had a chance with everything else, with the riots and everything else, to look into what's going on with this. But this is the other thing they're trying to distract you from because, and I pointed this out on Twitter yesterday, have you guys forgotten about Flynn yet? Have you forgotten, or do we need to continue to burn this country down until you forget? Do we need to keep coming up with disaster after disaster after disaster so you pay attention to what's happening on the ground versus people being investigated for violating the Constitution that will gladly come after you for a ham sandwich and the ability to stay in power? Anything that's devastating to the other side, and I am having a hard time talking at this point, but anything that's devastating to the left, to their narrative, to the power that they've managed to retain throughout the years, is going to get covered up by another disaster. This is the new normal for America. They talked forever about the new normal. The new normal. The new normal. This is the new normal. We saw that during COVID. Well, this right here is the new normal. Anything that comes up that is going to be devastating for the re-election chances, or possibly for the legal cases of many of these people that are in power, on both sides, mind you, but especially on the left at this point, is going to result in some kind of disaster to distract you from what's going on. All right, that is going to be it for news. So we're going to do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and I'm actually going to wait for the thing that I hate on the next tab because I want you guys to be surprised. So, for the thing that I like today, I talked a bit about the fact that I've been on a keto-adjacent diet. I'm not officially on keto because I didn't read the book, and I'm not into the fad, but I have cut my carbs by a massive amount over the last month. And, I mean, it was easy to cut them by a massive amount because I was eating a massive amount of them. I had 2 pieces of toast with breakfast. I had a sandwich at lunch. I usually have a big thing of some fresh cooked kind of meat with a big plate of rice or noodles or something else. I mean, I was eating carbs out the ass, and I had my vegetables too, and I thought I was eating healthy, but man, oh man, I was just loading up on the sugar. And during the last week before my birthday, I noticed the fact that I was at my heaviest. I couldn't sleep. I was having heartburn when I was trying to sleep. I couldn't bend down to tie my work boots. I couldn't fit into most of my jeans at that point. Even the loosest pair that I have, that I own, which are size 34 in the waist, I think they're relaxed fit or something, but they're like twice the size. Not twice the size, but they're definitely considerably bigger than all the rest of the jeans that I own. I couldn't even fit into those comfortably anymore. So I decided to, and I've talked about this on this show before, I talked to a friend of mine who's into holistic wellness, and I asked her for some pointers. And I mean, I don't eat good enough for her because I eat cold cuts for lunch, and that's supposed to be a big no-no on everything. But I wrap some cheese up in a piece of lunch meat, and I eat it that way. And I've cleaned up, and I eat a lot more natural stuff. But I still slip because of Tuesday when I do gaming. I'll still go and get fast food. I'll just get it without a bun. We talked about that earlier. I had Wendy's without a bun, and they put it on a big piece of lettuce. If you go to McDonald's and ask for no bun, they just put it in a dish. At Wendy's, they wrap it up in lettuce, like an actual big piece of lettuce that you can use as a bun. Wendy's is great if you are doing keto or keto adjacent. Wendy's is absolutely awesome if you're doing keto or keto adjacent. Absolutely. And I've been doing good with food, and I went out and I don't have a scale here, so I have no idea how much weight I've lost in physical weight. But I took my smallest pair of 34-inch waist jeans yesterday, and I put them on. And they buttoned up again for the first time in probably 6 months. They buttoned up again. And I was able to walk around comfortably in them, something I haven't been able to do in a year in that particular pair of jeans. So that's the thing I like today. Hard work and perseverance, and you start to see results. So I know it's a little bit of a brag, and I don't usually do a lot of bragging here, but I did good, and I can notice differences. I have a lot more energy. It's easier for me to go up and down stairs. I know that was getting hard for a point. I am sleeping like a baby when I do sleep, which is like 4 hours a night because I've got so much other stuff going on. But when I do sleep, it's great, and everything is going great for me. Plus, you wouldn't think that you can eat really, really good on a diet, but if you're doing low carb, there's enough stuff out there and a lot of home cooking as well, and you can eat really, really well on low carb. So that's a thing that I like today. Now for a thing that I hate. So Vanessa Bourbon over on Twitter put this up. It's a retweet of a screenshot here, and I hate this. If you have kids watching this or listening to this, if you're back on the audio platform, I apologize. You probably shouldn't have kids listening to this, because I am very coarse on my language, but this just takes the case. Vanessa Bourbon tweets out 2 hours ago, still believe this the lie that this was all about George Floyd. Carmen, on a screenshotted tweet, says, I say we shove big black cocks in the throats of white women across the nation. Make their husbands record it, make the kids watch. We had to be traumatized. It's y'all turn. I disavow everything that is put up here. First and foremost, I disavow everything that's put up here. But this is just disgusting. This is not about vengeance anymore. This is not about justice anymore. This is about control. This is about power. This is about shove the white man down, and we're going to take this nation. These are ethno-nats, just as bad as the KKK and the neo-Nazis that invaded my Discord server. This is ethno-nat at the highest level. But it's not going to get called out because it's on the other side. This is control, this is power, and this is ethno-nationalism. But it's not white ethno-nationalism, so it's okay. It's fine. And, if this went the other direction, if this absolutely went the other direction, it wouldn't be Vanessa Bourbon that was screen capping it and putting it back up. It would be a mainstream news outlet coming out and putting this back up. This would be on the 6 o'clock news everywhere, even on the local stations. Your local affiliate would be saying, please put your hands over your children's ears as we give you this disturbing image that this horrible white ethno-nat put out. Collectivism and ethno-nationalism are wrong. From either side. We are individuals. But in our society, if you have the right kind of collectivism, you're praised as a hero and you're brave. And you have the wrong kind of ethno-nationalism, you're evil scum. Meanwhile, all the rest of us who are individualists look up and say, hey, look over here, check us out. Come over and hang out with us. And that's the thing that I hate today. So that's going to be it for the day. We will be back here tomorrow with more contemporary because this news is never going to stop. And even once this is all said and done and over with, I mean, we're starting to see some of the riots start to quell. They've got another disaster waiting in the wings. I'm afraid to ask what it was or what it's going to be. But maybe we'll find out tomorrow. Maybe we'll find out next week. But either way, we'll be back here tomorrow with more news. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.